Olá, boa
Hello,
tarde,
good afternoon, welcome.
bem-vindos. Eu me chamo
My name is Marcelo Oliveira.
Marcos do Rio de
I'm
Janeiro.
from the west area of Young.
Roxa com
I'm wearing this purple and green blouse,
lindíssimas aqui
and I'm
que
with
podem vir um
wonderful
pouco mais
people
das datas
today
para
here
poder contemplar o
so
lançamento do
that we
relatório de
can
pesquisa
launch the
Justice,
report on the
Clima e
research climate
Feminismo,
justice
impactos
and
e
feminist
soluções. Muito
activisms,
obrigada por estarem conectados,
impacts
por
and
colocarem
solutions. Thank you
energizem
for
aqui com
being
a gente.
connected to
Deem um
us.
tchauzinho quem está conectado aqui na live,
Wave to
a
us if you're
Yasmin está
connected
aqui, para a
online
gente pelo menos se sentir um pouquinho mais perto,
so
né?
that
Porque a
we
gente
can feel
gostaria
closer, right?
em estar
Because we would
juntos.
like to be
Então
together,
vamos
right?
lá. A
Face to face.
gente tem tradução simultânea aqui
We
na
do
live,
have
então quem
simultaneous
estiver no Zoom,
translation. If
é só
you're
você
watching
ajustar
on
diretamente
Zoom,
na barra de Zoom aqui nos
you
três
may
pontinhos, e aí você
choose the
pode
three dots
ajustar
and
a
then
interpretação.
choose
Se essa
interpretation
dificuldade, qualquer
and
dúvida
then
pode
the
avisar a gente,
right
tá
language.
bom?
If you need, you
Bom,
can talk to us as well.
vou explicar para vocês um pouco da estrutura então
I'm
desse
going to
evento.
explain
Agradecer
the
pelo convite de estar
structure
aqui
of
nessa
this event,
mediação, que eu
and I'd like to
sou
thank
bem
you
curiosa
for
para
the
ouvir mais
invitation
sobre
to
essa questão.
mediate. I'm very
E
curious
vou
about this
contar um pouco da
research,
estrutura de como
and
vai
I
ser
wanted
nossa
to talk
apresentação.
about the
A
structure
gente
of
vai
this
iniciar
presentation.
com a apresentação
We
da
are going to
estrutura por
start
parte da
with the
diretoria, professora
presentation
Jonathas e
of the
Jonathas.
research by
Depois a gente
Savannah
passa para os
Brito. She is
convidados e
the
convidadas que
executive
vão
director
comentar
from
essa
ELAS Plus,
apresentação.
and then the
Depois a
other
gente tem uma rodada
authorities
de
are going to
comentários
comment
para a
on
gente poder conversar um
the
pouco sobre esse
presentation, and
relatório,
then
esse
we're going
relato
to
e
have
como
a
que ele
round
gera impacto, né,
of
real
comments
no nosso
to
dia a dia
understand
aqui.
how this is going to generate impact
Então,
in the routine
eu
of
queria começar
women's
aqui
lives.
o momento em que a gente passa para a Savana.
So
Tudo
I'm
certo
going
aqui?
to give the floor to
Para poder
Savannah,
apresentar essa pesquisa
and
e
she's going to
contextualizar clima e
present
ativismo
the
feminista,
research
impactos e
Climate
soluções.
Justice and Feminist
Vou ler aqui a
Activism,
bio da
Impacts and
Savana.
Solution.
Ela é
Savannah
bacharelada em Ciências Sociais pela
is
Universidade Federal de
has
Viçosa,
a
especialista em gênero e justiça
social
social
science
pela
degree from the
Pós-graduação
University of
Fundación. Tem 18
Viçosa.
anos de atuação
She's
global de
expert
liderança
in
no âmbito
public
mundial do
policies from
desenvolvimento
Flaxo,
feminista e
Argentina. She
LGBT+.
has
A
18
Savana
years
também é
in
executiva geral
human
da
rights
Doar para
experience.
Transformar,
She is
desde
director
janeiro
of
desse
LS
ano de
Plus, Donate to
2024,
Transform,
depois de uma jornada de
since
9 anos
January
de trabalho com a
2024 after
organização.
leading the
Ela é uma peça
program
fundamental
areas
no
for
compromisso da
9 years.
organização
She
de
is a
promover e
key
fortalecer
piece
a
in the
luta pelos
commitment
direitos das mulheres
of the organization
e outras
to
transidentidades.
strengthen the
Então, já
rights
para a gente
of
cantar junto,
cis,
não peço que
trans,
vocês batam
and
palma, mas assim,
other
só para ver que,
identities
né, que
of
aí é palma para
women of
Marina,
other
para
identities.
Juliana,
So
palmas aqui, que dá para
we
ver,
cannot clap right now,
e
but we
passar a
can
palavra então
wave our
para a
hands. This is
Savana.
the sign
Savana, por
language in
favor.
Portuguese, and I'm going to give the floor to Savannah. Savannah, please.
Obrigada,
Thank you,
Marcele.
Marceli.
Vou começar aqui
I'm
fazendo
going to
também um
start
exercício
by
da audiodescrição.
describing
Eu estou
myself.
vestindo
I'm
uma
wearing
camisa de botões, assim, verde
a
claro.
blouse.
Ao fundo eu tenho
It's
uma parede verde
light
escura
green.
com uns
In my
quadros e também uma
background, you
segunda
may
parede
see
branca.
uh, a
Eu sou uma
white and green
mulher de
wall
pele
with some
clara, de
pictures.
fato,
I
com
am a
cabelos
black
cacheados, mais ou menos na altura dos
woman with
ombros.
light
Uso um
complexions, curly
piercing no
hair.
septo e também uso
I,
um piercing, outro
I
piercing
have
de argola
a piercing
no lábio
in
inferior,
on my
lábio
nose
superior.
and in
Então, depois de
also
fazer essa
on my
audiodescrição,
left
eu
lip,
quero dar as
the
boas-vindas a
lower
todas as
lip.
pessoas aqui
I would like
presentes,
to
aos nossos
welcome you
convidados,
all the
que vão fazer
guests,
os comentários em
and
nome da nossa querida Helena
on
Teodoro,
behalf
presidenta do
of Helena
conselho do
Teodoro.
Elas
She is the president
E
of
é
the
uma
board
alegria estar aqui com
of
vocês
LS
hoje nessa
Plus, and it's a
tarde. O
great
Festival
joy
Elas
to
é um
be with
marco
you
lançar essa
for
pesquisa. O
this
Elas,
afternoon. It's a great
ao longo de seus 24 anos, tem fortalecido a
moment
trajetória
for
das
us
mulheres e
to
com essa
present this
oportunidade, esse
report. We've
compromisso
been
que o Elas
strengthening
tem
women
por
for
ser, como
24
parte desse
years, and our
ecossistema, por ter
commitment is
acesso
to
a
have
muitos
access
dados
to
importantes e
many
relevantes.
important data,
Então, a
many pieces
gente
of
fez
important
questão de
data.
sistematizar esses
So
dados e
we wanted
apresentar essa
to
pesquisa como forma de colaborar para o
systematize this
fortalecimento desse
data
ecossistema,
and show
mas
you
com mais e
this
melhores
research to
financiamentos para as
strengthen
organizações de
this
mulheres
system so that
atuando
we can
no campo da
fund
justiça
uh,
climática.
women's project, especially in the field of
Quero também
climate
dizer que essas
justice.
soluções que a gente apresenta
And
aí
these
são
solutions that
soluções
we're going to present
ancestrais,
are
criativas
ancestral
e
solutions,
que têm
very
sido
creative
pouco
and they haven't been funded and seen. So estimates from the UN show that 0.01% of the international fundings are coming to projects concerning women's rights and climate change. So that's why we're here, the reason we are here. I wanted to introduce to you this report. I'm going to share my presentation. Just a minute, I'm going to share the presentation.
Vou compartilhar com vocês. Eu queria só saber se todo mundo consegue ver.
Are you able to see the slides? Is it working?
Então tá. Então
Okay.
eu vou dizer aqui qual é a estrutura dessa pesquisa que a gente vai
I'm going
apresentar.
to talk about the structure of this research. We are going to present the groups we are talking about, those who answered the questionnaire, how they access the financial resources, which impacts and effects of extreme climate events these groups are facing in their territories, and what are the local climate solutions and local responses that they are developing in their territories. And then before we start presenting results, I would like to acknowledge the important work of the people that worked as a consulting group, and I'm going to present the methodology of the research. Our collaborators are Juliana Manayara Tupinambá, an indigenous woman from the Tupinambá people. She is part of Amorim. She's an educator and a doctorate student, and she is studying the criminalization of indigenous leaders. And we also have Cindy, a non-binary person. She's an activist. They are an activist, and we had the lucky to have them as a contributor for 4 years. They were part of our team and following the topic of climate and gender. So Cindy and Ituia Manayara, I'd like to thank you for your important work of analysis with ELAS team, and I'm going to give the floor to you so that you may present the methodology of this research.
Olá, pessoal.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, everyone.
Eu estou vestindo, né?
I'm wearing
casaco, capote roxo.
a purple coat.
Brincos, né?
I'm wearing my earrings made of feathers, green feathers,
E branca.
red and white feathers as well. I'm wearing glasses. My hair is long and dark, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the methodology of this research on climate change and feminist activism, identifying the impacts and different solutions of these groups. And I'd like to highlight that through the questionnaires that were sent to the Women in Movement program that was developed by ELA, and the 1,280 groups were analyzed.
We have representativities of every region in Brazil, and on top of those forms, we are able to create some different categories. So we can try to understand what was the relation between the activities that were developed by the groups, so we could deal with this climate crisis. And we are able to observe that most of the representativity of the groups that were Black leaderships and LGBT LGBT plus, young people, people with disabilities, and indigenous people. So we had more than 500 representatives of municipalities in Brazil, and each one of them were reporting their story, the story of their organizations and groups, where we are able to reflect and observe this diversity. And we also had this regional distribution, and we were able to get a different look of this. As we had different groups, we were able to understand which region they are coming from and what would they report more about their own organizations. So we were able to see that we had a lot of organizations from northeast and north of Brazil, and all of these groups reporting what they are going through. In the Northeast, for example, they had a lot of this drought and floods that they had, landslides. They had a dry period, and then in the north part, as all of you are following, we have this drought in the Amazons, the fires, the floods, and the time that they are going through this different climates, and everything's different in the Amazon. We never seen that before. In the south of Brazil, we had a lot of floods, especially in the state of Rio Grande do Sul, and many people were affected. So we had a lot of this, and so the southwest having this landslide, especially when we are talking about urban areas and peripheries and the poor neighborhoods. And the biggest part in Brazil, and we have the farmers, they can be from the MST or the indigenous quilombolas, trying to fight for their own space against this agribusiness that are growing more and more and affecting more and causing those criminal fires in this region of Brazil. I'm going to be brief here, but I think that as we were able to have those qualitative and quantitative analysis, we were able to understand the context of each one of the organizations and where they were operating. And we have these issues that we were trying to find what were the activities that they were doing, what was related to those solutions to mitigate the climate changes. And I'm going to talk briefly about one case, one example of one of the groups, and an indigenous group. They mentioned that they were working as farmers according to their own traditions, and in this process, they were trying to recover area that was degraded and what was happening in the community with this. With their food supplies. And when they were suffering with the floods in their territory and they lost their plantations. And this had a great impact not only in their food chain, but in their traditional spiritual issues, because any of the things they lost, it was part of their rituals, so they would talk about this. So from there, we started creating these different categories, the main categories, and also the subcategories, so we were able to identify what were the solutions that they would use and how this would impact when we are talking about climate change. And I think that the most it's impressive when we are talking about that those groups, they, even without the resources or sometimes with not enough investments, they were able to create this strategy in conscious or even unconscious to be able to contribute to mitigate, and they are able to adapt themselves in this environment, even facing all those tragedies that are happening due to these climate changes. Now I pass the floor to Shinji so he can add a few comments. Thank you, Savannah. I'm going to do my self-description. I have an Asian descent. I have a curly hair. I'm wearing glasses, white T-shirt. I have a necklace, yellow necklace, and an earring here. And I want to use this moment so we can highlight the differences of this research that it's connected to who is ELAS+, in this capability of ELAS+ to support groups without the need to be a company, without the need to have this different companies to receive those resources. And you can see that this will reflect in the research that it's 54.30% of the groups do not have they were not companies. And this helps the research, especially when we're talking about the populations that live in this indigenous territory, in quilombolas territory, in different traditional people, in the favelas, in the periphery, in this urban periods, and all of them, they are being affected by these climate changes and that are bringing the solutions that we need the most. And so this research showed that they were not a corporate taxpayer number. And we don't need those big payers and those big funders, and we are able to give the importance that they needed. That's why this form, it was very important, because ELAS were able to create this form because it's simple, it's straight, it has a language that it's accessible for each one of the groups and allows the groups to find the best way to tell their own stories, besides giving the socioeconomical data and allowing for us to get each one of the little parts of the story like an artifact. And we are able to build this story having a common point that can pass these boundaries. So I want to finalize thanking for the opportunity to be part of this research, to thank you, ELAS group, of everyone that is here in this webinar, this entire partnership, and especially I want to thank you, the groups, because they were able to share their story with us and they were able to find and search to build this structure of this funding structure, and so we can meet this justice. And thank you, everyone, and I give the floor back to you, Sarah. So, sorry, I'm trying to change the slides here. Technology is not my forte. I'm coming back to this slide just to highlight one of the data that they presented here in this methodology. Cindy and Ju were talking about. Once again, I'd like to thank them and to say that it's very important to observe that from this 1,280 organizations that answered the form, almost 80% of them had a Black leadership. 55.39% is LGBTI+, 40.23% it's the youth, 14.77% have the people with disabilities, and 14.61% indigenous leadership. So I think that this data is very important to us. And going forward in this presentation, talking about the financial resources, what is the situations of fundings of those organizations, how they survive, what are their resources, and what are the sources that they need, what the research found that most of the groups work with less or even no resources, and few organizations have bigger resources. So it could be, we see the inequality that we see in society as a whole. So when we look at this graph, this pizza graph, we can see that less than half of it, 48.8%, had a budget that it's lower than 20,000 reais per year. In this year, we are talking about 2023. If we add this slice with the organizations that had between 20 and 50,000, it's 72%. 72% of those organizations that are surviving and executing all their activities or the actions that are so important, everything that they are doing to help society with less than 50,000 reais a year, or sometimes not even that. And when we are talking about the sources of these fundings, what the resource were able to find that those organizations work with a high diversity of financing sources. So they are trying to survive, not depending in one unique source and trying to mobilize these resources. And the independent funders, the national independent funders, they appear in the 5th place as the main source, with 18.59% of the groups saying that they access these national independent funds, and this mobilization of resources in the local level, in the community level. So all of the 4 items that appear in different categories and different funding categories before the independent funds are related to this local and community level. That it's volunteer, individual donations, service providers. Remember that those individual donations, many times they represent people from the group itself. They are donating their own resources to keep the actions and to keep that group active. We have services and products, events, parties, rafts. So they have to be created to survive. But this shows us, once again, it's the importance of having the resources and the independence funds to have this funding, the support of those organizations. And we are able to see that other sectors, they need to be committed with financing those organizations and those initiatives. And it's the call that we have for you, the commitment. This is what we want to get your attention with this research. When we are talking about the challenges that we have, we found that around 97% of the groups, 95%, not 97% of the groups said that they have obstacles to mobilize those resources. And one of the main obstacles, 66%, they are talking about that it's a lot of bureaucracy or excess of demands. This is the biggest obstacle. Not having this, when we were presented this methodology, not having the tax ID. So more than 48% of the groups that answered, they don't have the tax ID. And many times for an option or a strategy, a political strategy of a group. And this cannot be an issue for something so important and relevant of all the activities that the groups have. That's why they not only support those organizations, and they also are part of those activities to help them find other fundings. And not having people to write their projects, it's also one of the obstacles, and this shows that many of those organizations in reality, they are done by people that are working as volunteers. So many times they are not being paid. So they have other jobs that it's what give them their revenue, and they are donating their times. So for those organizations, it's hard to find someone that can dedicate itself to write those proposals and to mobilize the resources. Also, the lack of knowledge about where to find the resources. Where are the resources for the women activists, cis and trans and other identities? Where are the resources in this climate justice theme? Also, the lack of tools and equipments, very extensive forms and difficult to fulfill. In the research, when we are able to access, you're going to see that the language, it's also an obstacle that the groups find, knowing that many of those resources are coming from other countries. So many times being able to access, to be able to sometimes they have only English calls or only Spanish calls, and we need to understand that in Brazil we live with populations that speak different languages. We have the indigenous people here to reaffirm that we do not speak only Portuguese. We have more than 200 languages here in Brazil. And we need to think about this when we are talking about funding. Extreme climate events, talking about the impacts that were reported by this, so 280 organizations. 485 affirmed that they were affected by the extreme climate events in the last year, and 69% of them were affected by floods, 37% by droughts, 22% fires, 21% landslides, 9.7% by coast erosion, and 19%, it's a relevant number, they put others. And with those options, we were able to have a few findings that we opened so they could name what are the others. And they were able to talk about rains, heat waves, smoke, and enterprises. And this shows us the complexity of this climate change and how does intelligence of the analysis of the organizations show us the human actions and the effects as one of the extreme climate changes. And the profiles of those organizations that reported that are being impacted by the climate changes, the extreme climate changes, 52.22% are indigenous, 51.32% people with disabilities, 40.97% are young, 37.9% LGBTI+, and 36.20% are Black. And I also like to get your attention for something that our researchers also show us, this sub-notice, because many organizations, although they were saying that they were not being affected by extreme climate events, they reported in the description they would talk about those extreme climate events. So that was interpreting as a possibility of finding this different process. Once they were happening more and more, we also have this natural trend to think they are normal, and we are putting the research in with this data and the debate. So this cannot be seen as natural, and we can try to find investment and strengthen the actions to mitigate and to adapt and find any other solution that we are going to see here. When you're talking about the impact that are generated by those organizations, we have a lot of damages, different damages that will affect food safeties, access to plants, they will impact the health, the communities, and those consequences were listed here, and many of them are highlighted here as the main consequences that were identified in the analysis. Mental health damage, contamination, impoverishment, inequalities, climate, migration, the increase of the threats and attacks to civil society once they are showing where they are fighting those enterprises and these human actions that are also causing those effects, and they are all being threatened and attacked, and they fight this violence processes because they are doing this work and the action that they have because of that activists. Also, a lot of sexism, racism in the strategies and climate changes, and also with this territorial disputes, the increase of the racism and religious prejudice. People are breaking the religious houses and other spirituality places. When we're talking about the solutions, the climate solutions that were systematized here and associated to one of the categories where we are already used in this climate field, and others categories that are related to the work of activists of those organizations. So starting by mitigation, I'm not going to read everything, but the research you're going to read and you find more details about each one of those perspectives, the mitigations, and the groups are working in defending the territories of the communities and biomes, this social biodiversity.
They've been building food systems and crops which are regenerative, This is something else very traditional. It's a historical feature of these communities, especially indigenous communities, Quilombo communities. Traditional knowledge in contrast with the systems that are enhancing the climate crisis, such as monoculture and livestock. They have strengthening the political and economic side of adaptation with contingency community plans concerning loss and damage. The organizations are working with the construction of networks for support and assistance, campaigns for donation, protocols to access rights, actions to recover the impacted areas, and work groups for the reconstruction. In terms of just transition, they have methodologies for the economic and sustainable development, which is equal in this transitional process. Claims against false solutions such as hydropower plants and solar plants and wind farms. In terms of food sovereignty, I've mentioned that before. So we have subsistence models with indigenous techniques, fire management and fighting fires. And in the field of responsabilization, they have been claiming against the impact increase with campaigns for raising awareness and with public hearings and actions. They are investing in this solidarity economy with cooperatives, training courses, generating income. In terms of traditional knowledge, they've been working with the knowledge of ecosystems and landscape, managing soil and land, with the prediction of disaster, with community care and social technologies, and also sustainable way of life, taking care of the territories, because now we are no longer speaking about protection only. We have to talk about regeneration. Concerning climate awareness, we have campaigns and we have work groups for cleaning and so on. And now the conclusions. We highlighted some of the points here on this slide. And I'm going to follow a different script now to tell you that these relevant initiatives that we acknowledged may be sustainable and grow. We need more support from supporters, government, international actors, and this is key to assure that the solutions brought by the organization may continue to regenerate and protect the territories, and also creating gender equality, contributing to bridges being built so that the resources can be brought to those who need. They are bringing the solutions, and each dollar will enhance the impact. The independent funds are a source of resource for these organizations, and it's key to strengthen the independent funds so it's possible to develop a just society in terms of gender and race, and also integrated with nature. So I'd like to thank you for the attention, and I'd like to say that you may find a QR code to download the research and help us in this very important mission. Before I give the word to Marcele, I would like to ask her to introduce everyone, and I'd like to introduce Marcele. She is a cultural producer and climate activist, and also a host at Circo Voador, and the executive director of Perifalab, co-founder of Climate Clima de Mudança Coalition. She's a young negotiator in the Secretariat of Climate in Rio. She does research on cultural practice and fighting the consequences of climate change in peripheries, focusing on adaptation and climate change. We are in great hands. She's a great expert and a great communicator. Thank you, Marceli. Thank you so much, Savannah, for the introduction and presenting the research. My name is Marcel, but it's good to remember everything else. So if you're following on YouTube, Marina, Renata, Beatriz, Jaqueline, Silvia, Marta, Luísa, Mona, Vilma, Amanda, Rúbia, Ana, Janaína, Isabel, Beatriz, it's great that you're with us. May we go on connected to enhance this debate. From what we heard now, we are going to talk about the relevance of building the data. They are a potential for investment in these groups with different solutions that are being created and developed in all regions in Brazil. We know about the solutions. We have research showing that we are efficient and that deserves acknowledge and funding. Now let's have our round of comments. Each guest will have 7 minutes to contribute for the conversation, and I'm going to keep time. I'm going to show up to tell you that your time is up so that we can have several contributions and we can bring back them home. The first guest is Alicia Amorim. She is an expert in climate policy. She has a law degree from the State University in Rio de Janeiro. She's also a master from London School of Economy. She started as a lawyer in the Icatu group, and she has a decade of experience in the international development and sustainable development, also working in civil society and philanthropy. She was the partner of the JIP and coordinator of the program of ICS, Institute Climate and Society, and she's been developing a great work with Elisa Badu in the Green Party. She's been to the German Congress, and she commended philanthropy for climate as this global program. She is the assistant of communication at ICS, and it's going to be great to listen to her. Alice, are you there? You may start. Hello, Marcel. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to me to be here with you, having the opportunity to listen about the research. I thought it was great. I had read the material. It was very nice to read. Some bad news, hard to process, but at the same time, it was very important to read this material and digest the information. I wanted to start by commenting about the data presented. What caught my attention, especially for those working with philanthropy and with the climate agenda, and thinking about this perspective, how can we use this research to start with the solutions? One thing is understanding the great challenges and problems that we have, but concerning the urgent moment we are living and the need we have to find fast solutions, even if they are not permanent, if they're able to answer a little bit about the crisis, how can we observe this research and think about some of these solutions? One of the points that called my attention was the fact that the organizations, most of them, are not formal institutions. This piece of data, 54% of the collectives not having a formal register, this is critical for us to think about access to funding. Because if on the one hand, we know that the solutions are at the forefront. For us to enter this financial world, it's very important to have mechanisms to access the funds. And this is an important limitation. And I was wondering why this is happening. What is the barrier? I didn't find in the research why it happens. Is it very expensive to become a formal institution? It's a lack of technical support to develop disability. But this is an easy solution. There's an easy solution for that. And it's an important point for us to consider. Because without that, we won't be able to reach big funds. So this is a challenge that we face in several organizations. For us in the Institute Climate and Society, we see this challenge, and our work ends up being focused on enabling the resources to be distributed in terms of climate help, climate aid, but without this minimum requirement of becoming a formal organization, it's hard for us to support them. So we understand the problem, but we see that there are several solutions possible to be used. And the second point that called my attention, and I thought it was interesting, is the municipal scale of the collectives. Because when we follow up the debates on climate change, what's being discussed are the local solutions. We know there are solutions that need to be scaled up. The agenda of medication demands a scale which is regional or national or even global, but the adaptation agenda is different. The more we delve deeper into what needs to be done, more this intelligence and this local work is a solution so that we can have effective solutions. So the collectives are much more advanced than a great deal of the climate movement in Brazil, because many times they don't work in the territory. So if on the one hand, the lack of formal institutions is a hard problem, this municipal work is a very important asset. And it's also important to reflect upon this point, which is the intangible aspect of the impact. It's a non-material impact. It's an emotional, physical, and spiritual impact. That is not an impact that only women are feeling. Everybody is feeling in several different levels. So it's important to put this dimension in this research because it's a type of impact that is hard to analyze. And at the end of the day, the idea is not to have this impact. We are not able to adapt or mitigate thinking about this future in which the scientific evidence is showing that we're going to have more and more impact, almost with no solution. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't deal with that. On the contrary, it's a very important topic, and we should debate that. And in case of Brazil, I feel that we don't reflect enough about this issue. We don't have institutional instruments to deal with that. I've been following up this debate over the world, and many people are talking about mental health concerning young people, adolescents, and women, concerning climate change in the world. But in Brazil, this debate is not very hot, and you're bringing that in this research, and I think this is very important. And last, I'd like to say that the regenerative agriculture, that was one of the solutions, has a huge field of possibilities to access resources. It's an emerging field in terms of climate change. The fact that you're able to systematize these solutions and show this experience, bringing this claim to the arena, I think this is a great opportunity. So I think that the research can help a lot, bringing these groups in the radar of the mechanisms that exist around. So that's it. Congratulations on your research, and thank you so much for this opportunity of being with you today. Thank you, Alice. It was very important to listen to you, to your experience concerning climate change. You have a lot of experience supporting institutions that are fighting climate change, and you talk about decarbonization and an impact on the territory. So it's great to listen to your perspective. Now we are going to have the next guest who is going to bring her comments. I'd like to invite Juliana Strobel. She's the director of Avina Institution. She's been working there since 2008, promoting collaborative processes in terms of climate, biomes, especially the Amazon, water, and democracy. She led the construction of multi-sector network for the Amazon Fund, trying to find common visions among different actors. She elaborated this proposal called Resilient Marajó that was approved by the Green Fund of Climate. The objective is to increase the resilience of farmers, Quilombo people, and extractivists using the diversified methods. Welcome, Juliana. Share about your knowledge to us. Juliana, are you there? Hello. Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, especially ELAS Fund for the invitation. I have to say that I love to read this research. It was necessary for Brazil and Latin America, so congratulations. This data is very relevant, in fact. For those who do not know Avina Foundation, we are a foundation that is turning 30 this year. We have our roots in the Global South. We were founded in the Global South, and we have this perspective of the Global South. In everything we do with our partners in more than 19 countries in Latin America, we also have some work in Africa and Asia, also aiming at human dignity and care about the planet. And I had prepared my speech concerning what we found when we elaborated the proposal for the Green Fund of Climate. I had prepared something to tell you about the importance of women and how the solution is really locally led, especially in the Marajó region, in also Salvaterra and Cachoeira do Arari regions. But I thought I should change my perspective to climate funding itself. This project called Resilient Marajó aims at increasing the resilience of farmers to the impact of climate, adapting their production in the region of Marajó. It took us 5 years to negotiate with the Green Fund of Climate to get this approved. And we had to overcome several barriers, and I wanted to share them with you so that we can find solutions together. This is a project that, of course, we had to present climate studies. First of all, for you to reach this kind of resource, you need, in fact, to prove the climate impact with deep studies that are very expensive, that may show scientifically that, yes, this region is experiencing impact. They need that. The IPCC reports are not enough. They need something specific for that territory where the fund is going to be applied.
And we were able to approve this project because getting the recognition that the population, the local population, the Ribeirinhas, agricultures, and especially the farmers, and especially the quilombolas, they were practicing those climate local solutions. They know how to mix the species in a way that they're able to survive to these climate changes throughout this entire year and from those years until today. But they need this reinforcement to amplify this solution, to be able to live by this. And in this negotiation, we are able to prove that, in fact, what those people are doing, it's a climate solution. So for this, we had studies to prove what we were saying. And yes, the women are main part, especially when we are talking about plantation and food safety. And it's being seen because it does not go to the stores. It's to feed their own family and neighbors. But when we are talking about funding, the climate funding, how do we do that? How do we get those resources and send them to those local communities that, in fact, we already know, as Alice was saying, the local adaptation is done locally. It's different from mitigation, where you are mitigating in the world is going to improve for everyone. Adaptation, it's a local solution, it's a local level, and those who know the local context are the local population. But access, for example, we have this philanthropy resources that are already sensible for those issues in these local solutions when we are talking about gender. But we need to be realistic. Philanthropy is nothing close to the problems that we have to solve. And in fact, we do need to work that this climate funding, this international funding of a green fund of climate, this adaptation fund, all of those funds, they are being created by the big governments in the world. They, in fact, need to get to the final end. But there is a complex access. We have a lot of bureaucracies. We have political barriers. You need to understand how to negotiate internally in your own country so you're able to ask for these resources, to have the right to write a proposal to ask for the resources. And it's going to demand a high profile of institutional structure. And I might say that for Avina, that it's 30 years old, it was very complex. We need to change many things in our structure as we were elaborating the proposal to adapt ourselves to those rules, and only because of that. And imagine organizations that don't have their tax ID yet. So how can we do these resources come to this, in fact? But when we need to approve those resources, and you need to get all the legal documents that is demanded by those funds. We have the language barrier that was said here. Even though if the person speaks English or not, it's not their local language, they cannot do the negotiations at the same level that the person that is a natural from that language. We don't have enough data about climate to balance this climate intelligence that the demand. We have a debate, what is development, what is climate, what is the development problem, what is a climate problem. And the funds there keep saying, no, development problem, it's for their own country. It's not a climate fund problem. And we don't have enough data about gender because that is coming to show us that. And I think that we do need to, I'm almost done, Michelle. I think that we should start thinking big. Of course, that philanthropy, it's being mobilized so the resources would get here, but we need to bring together philanthropy, based organizations, independent funds, local governments that are also suffering with this. So we need to come together to understand how we can understand the rules and make people embrace the solution when we are talking about climate adaptation. And if it's local, and if we have this whole level of difficulties and obstacles to access the resources, it's not going to work. And we know that we don't have time. So I ask you to talk about this in a different conversation, so we can find ways to bring those efforts together and to find ways to unblock this international climate funding that it's so hard to access. That was it. Thank you. I will be here if you have questions.
Obrigada, Juliana. Muito bom te ouvir, abrir esse tópico.
Thank you, Juliana. It's great to hear from you. It's a very complex topic, but it's important. And we understand that those who need access are the ones that really need to access that because they go through many difficulties. Thank you for your contribution. We now pass the floor for our next guest, that is Esme Stout. Esme is a political analyst for the development of the cooperation and development, economical cooperation and development, OECD. So as he also worked in as one of the organizations and the junior political analysis and the board to develop these issues where she were talking about sustainable finances, gender inequality related to crisis and vulnerability. Welcome, Esme. Please, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for having me. It's really great to be part of this conversation. So my name is Esme Stout, and I'm a policy analyst at OECD Net Forward, which is the network of foundations working for development. And we've had great collaboration with ELAS and also Rede as well in the context of Brazil's presidency of the G20. So first of all, I want to congratulate you on the survey report. It's really rich in the findings. And just maybe to start with, three things that struck me. So the first is that almost 38% of respondents report being affected by an extreme event. The second is the reach of the survey. So the fact that it covers 500 different municipalities of Brazil. And thirdly, the point about 97% of groups reported facing obstacles in mobilizing resources. So I'll come back to those points throughout my comments. So really, I just want to start on some overarching OECD research on gender and climate justice. So at the OECD in the Development Center, we have the Social Institutions and Gender Index, the SIGI report. So the 2023 Global SIGI report has a dedicated chapter on empowering women to become agents of change for a climate resilient world. And so this in particular focuses on resilient agriculture, disaster risk reduction, and renewable energy. And it really analyzes systemic barriers across 179 different countries that hinder women's empowerment to respond to, adapt to, and mitigate climate change. So I encourage you all to have a look at that report because I think it's really interesting and relevant to this conversation. And there are some recommendations in there, for example, about involving women in decision-making processes, developing gender transformative plans and policies, particularly when it comes to gender transformative budgeting, and also engaging men and boys in these conversations. So the network of foundations working for development is obviously based around philanthropy. So in particular, we bring together philanthropy that's both based in the Global South and that carry out their programmatic work in the Global South. So in terms of data then, earlier this year, we published a policy note looking at how philanthropy supports gender equality and climate. So even though we know there are loads of examples of women as agents of change for climate change or climate crisis, on average, just 4.5% of philanthropic funding, so around 557 million per year, goes towards this intersection. So there's a noticeable gap. So basically, how are we trying to tackle this, both as a network and beyond? So as a network, we have three different pillars, education, gender, and health, and we're trying to integrate climate across those three pillars in the thinking. So, for example, at COP28, we launched a call to action for gender responsive climate action, which urges philanthropy to increase their support for gender responsive projects and highlights the need for more reliable data on the impact of these actions. Earlier this year at the F20 Climate Solutions Forum, we engaged in discussions. We convened different stakeholders on how philanthropy can play a larger role in the Brazilian context, supporting gender and climate justice. And most recently at the United Nations Summit of the Future, we launched a statement on philanthropy's vision for the future, referencing the need to think about these issues in a more interconnected way. And we also hosted a roundtable on climate and gender with the Ban Ki-moon Foundation. So I think in terms of like opportunities and challenges for philanthropy at this intersection, I think the first is that going back to kind of the reach of the survey and your ability to kind of connect with these local organizations. I think that in the gender and climate space, there's a really established network already that philanthropy needs to kind of leverage, and we need to kind of put philanthropy in touch with more kind of local intermediary funds, etc., that can connect larger funding sources with these local actors. And I think a related point is the role of trust-based philanthropy. So we also published a report earlier in the year on flexible financing. So giving kind of core grant support. At the moment, this only represents around 16% of all philanthropic donations, or 19% of funding between 2016 to 19. However, the report also indicates that flexible funding can impact the type of organization that receives support from philanthropy. So I think that's something else that we need to look into, as well as policy, as well as advocacy, to keep this on international agendas, to also look at changing the modalities that philanthropy uses. We need also more data on what actually works. So how philanthropy is funding specific examples of groups that are working at the gender and climate intersection, and how maybe we can replicate those or scale them. And yes, I think we need to continue advocacy work at national and international fora, like the G20, like the UN. And part of that also, I think, as highlighted in the United Nations Summit of the Future, includes getting climate funders around the table. So often when we have these conversations, there's a lot of gender funders, gender philanthropy around the table listening, but often there's maybe one climate funder there. So it's really about how to cross-fertilize this knowledge and information across both groups. So I'll leave it there. I think I'm on time. Once again, thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thank you, Esme. Very nice to hear you. Muito obrigada pela sua fala.
Thank you for your presentation, for bringing this climate justice point of view with this cooperation between the economic development and with this international look, with this intergovernmental. It's important to get this connection between those spaces that are power spaces that are responsible for this path. We will continue now with our next collaborator, that is Yasmin. Yasmin represents Ibirapitanga Institute. She's an anthropologist and she is an expert with food. She is Jade's mother. She's working for 10 years in projects like this, with this mobilizing these groups and community networks focusing in human rights and sustainability. Hello, Yasmin, are you there? Welcome. Thank you, Marceli. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is okay. As Marcele said, I'm an expert with food systems at Ibirapitanga. That is an institution dedicated to strengthen civil society and the race equity and the food system. I want to thank you for ELAS invitation and the presentation and Savannah Juliana Change did with the about the research. It was excellent to get to know a little bit more. Although that I had read the material, it was great to see your presentation. And before I start, I want to say that I'm very happy to be part of this conversation with ELAS and with Comuá Network, because I was able to follow this trajectory of the network when it was only a philanthropy for social justice was when I was part of this, and the network was the first space. I can say that it was more elaborated, that allowed me to better understand the Brazilian philanthropy sector and its issues. So I like to give this recognition and this joy to meet you guys once again after that many years with a new name, with new people working here. And to start, I want to highlight how I think that study is in fact a very important initiative, because this philanthropy field does not have this well-spread practice as it should have. To go through those data, to look in a more analytical in this organization field that philanthropy wants to support. And this is a great hit at the end of the day, because as a founder, it's easy to find to feel comfortable to only talking about specific things. And those if the organizations, if they do not put themselves talking about issues, about their own strategies, their own projects, that is a practice that it's a main point of the work. It's easy, and it's easy for us to get hold in the past and to lose track of things, because not only the reality is very dynamic, but the groups that we want to support and strengthen, they also are part of this dynamic context, and we need to keep revisiting and questioning those spaces. And I think that what makes this more important, or what makes this study more important, is that the fact that it reached a number of groups and different leadership profiles and regional diversity that is interesting. I think that this flexibility and this diversity of Fundo ELAS needs to be healthy. 500 municipalities is a lot. We that working with this civil society, we know how is this the demand and how much we work to be able to get the communication and our supports. And I think this with Fundo ELAS and other independent funds and communitary funds, communitary institutions that are in front of this, we are able to see this through the data that you brought with this research, and it's being fundamental for the maintenance of this movement ecosystems that exist today in Brazil. So I think that this, when we look at the reach of those philanthropy resources and how they are being able to get to these base groups, it gets the attentions about this limitation. And I think that even though we consider the organizations that are dedicated to support civil society that are not enough, and we still see this concentration of resources in this Rio and São Paulo, and it's so easy to see that, because they are not able to hide that, and we are able to base ourselves in this Rio and São Paulo connection. And to stop this, to break this, we know that it involves a lot of hard work, a lot of disposition and availability, flexibility and creativity with these financial arrangements. And I would like to get the attention, because I think that although that we do not have enough resources only in the philanthropy sector to be able to surpass this challenge, I think that we need to talk more about this. I believe that we need to challenge ourselves more and to use this in its practices to increase the reach of those resources and to keep doing that. It's an everyday work.
E eu acho que em outro sentido, assim, o estudo provoca uma questão muito boa, né, e urgente, que é o papel das organizações filantrópicas, da filantropia no apoio às respostas à crise climática, que é uma pergunta que ela está cada dia mais em plena disputa, né? Se a gente já tinha organizações com uma certa...
If we had organizations with a consolidated strategy such as X ahead of us, now we have many others who are now delving deeper in this issue due to the emergency that we're experiencing. So this research is showing different ways for us to consider this issue. My time is almost up, but I'd like to highlight how much I thought it was meaningful that the research is showing the connection in this debate between climate crisis and food safety. And it's one of the most mentioned effects when we talk about extreme events. And in the last years, we've been discussing about this need of connection between this climate crisis and the food field. And we've been discussing within the field of food how we need to transition in our food systems. It's a very restrict dialogue with a colonial logic, very much centered in the development of specific technological solutions and centered in this idea of scale, silver bullets that will solve all of the issues we face. And these logics end up draining important resources, not only philanthropic resources, but also resources from other sectors. So I believe that the work by ELAS Fund and the food for thought brought by this research is very important. How could we think about food transition if we are not considering deeper issues such as land concentration, the guarantee of traditional lands, if you're not thinking about different perspectives of production and diet? And we will only enhance this debate if you're going to have diverse actors debating in this discussion. So, which kind of transitions do we need? Who is going to transition with us? So I'd like to congratulate ELAS Plus. I'd like to thank you for the invitation, and I'm available for us to think about that, how we can debate on the transitions more and more. That's it. Thank you. Thank you so much, Yasmin. Thank you for your inspiring speech, because many times things don't seem to be connected, but they are. When you talk about the coloniality and the importance of transition and speaking about food and diet, this is very important. Complex subjects, but they're about us, about the territories. Now we are going to have the next expert, a guest that it was invited to comment the research. Her name is Rosilene Souza. She's a leader from the Tupinambá region in the state of Bahia. She's an indigenous teacher. She is a representative in the Tupinambá Council. She's also a counselor at ICMBio. She's the coordinator of Tupinambá Women Group, and she's an indigenous woman who has always fought in the defense of the territory and the environment. Welcome, Rosilene. Good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to participate in this moment. I had great expectations, but I notice it's very important to participate because you bring different perspectives to us. We are part of small organizations, so it's important for us to understand the different perspectives. Recently, we were trying to get a grant, and we weren't able to get this grant, and we saw that only the big institutions were able to access that fund. But we are women at the grassroots. We are really concerned with the environment, we are concerned with sustainability and the women's perspectives. We are fighting all the time so that we are able to have at least a better quality of life. And for that, we need our territory. The territory must be healthy. And for it to be healthy, as indigenous women, we must be strong as well. Because we are developing this work step by step, with baby steps, because we don't have support. So I'd like to thank the ELAS group, because they are providing this different perspective to us. We are women from this group called Cunhatã. We are partners, and we have this group, which is not totally organized. We don't have a legally formalized institution, because we need an address, we need this register, and it's very hard for us to get that, because we are coordinated by FUNAI, this indigenous institution in Brazil. So we don't have our organization legally established, but you bring an important perspective to us, because it's raising the awareness of people here. And raising the awareness of those who might help us as well. We, in our organization, we've been fighting to preserve our territory. We've been fighting to affirm ourselves within this territory in different situations. We defend the territories from impacts. We have big mining companies entering the territory without our permission, with big infrastructure, and also companies from abroad trying to build big enterprises within the territory. And as women from the grassroots, we are facing them directly, and we have no support from other institutions, so that we can get stronger in the territory, so that we can really have the conditions to face them. Our lives are at risk. We have to defend ourselves as lawyers. We are women, and we are always in conflict with police officers, company owners, and even the justice, because many times they don't notice, or they pretend they don't notice, that we are people from this territory. We are protecting and caring about this territory. We want the territory to be well. Our land is our own body, is our own soul. If we don't have our body and our soul healthy, we won't be healthy. And the financial issue is very important for everything. And why is that? And there's immediate demand, it's hard because you don't know what to do, who to look for. And we, as women from the grassroots, we are trying to get the minimum to manufacture our handicrafts. We are farmers, we are fisher women, we also collect seafood, but we're trying to be trained, but it's hard for us to get training because of the distance. So it's very hard for us to go to training spaces, and we don't have much opportunity. So I'd like to talk about the importance of this moment. Understanding that we have a group like our group here with this different perspective, bringing this research to us. And I know that you're going to advance with this research. You're going to try to find solutions so that we can get stronger, getting resource to us and also guaranteeing our permanence in the territory. So this is key for us to move on with our work, taking care of our territory, strengthening women within the territory. And that's why we need this fund. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of the group because we had great expectations. And now we have this opportunity. And you're not only bringing experts to speak, but also us, people who experience the impacts in the territory. And I hope that we can be welcomed by other institutions. And the institutions should be closer to us. They should come to our territory to feel what we are talking about and what we are experiencing. So I'd like to thank you. And I'd like to ask for your support, because us, indigenous women, we need this support. Because we should be part of the politics. So I'd like to thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Rosilene. It's very important to listen from you, understanding the fights you've been struggling in your territory. We are talking about the northeast of Brazil, about the state of Bahia, about Ilhéus, and it's important to have funds to support them. Just another point that I forgot. We're also in a moment of expectations because we are waiting for our territory to be declared. We need a signature. We've been needing that for years, and our territory is a territory which is recognized, but it's not demarcated. So we, indigenous women, should have the ownership of the territory, so that those who only want to exploit our nature, they couldn't come in. And I know that this signature will provide a different perspective. We are going to have the autonomy to say, this is mine, I'm going to take care of this territory, so I can't let you come. and you cannot exploit our natural resources. Concerning the signature, it's very important for us to get it so that we can have demarcated land. I don't know if you followed the Tupinambá struggle, and we have great expectations. We have faith in our ancestors in Tupã, and I know that we are going to get it. So I'd like to thank you one more time for everything. Thank you, Rosilene. Now we are going to have the next guest, Vanessa Purper. Vanessa is the manager of Social Environmental House Fund. They support a climate emergency and strengthening the Global South. She's graduated from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. She also was part of the Communication University of the Federal University in Rio Grande do Sul. And from 2010 to 2018, she worked with NG on the strategic use of technology, supporting stakeholders in event productions. In Rio, I also have the support of their fund, so it's great to listen to you. Thank you, Marcel. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I am a white woman, and I have curly hairs by my shoulders. Today I'm wearing yellow glasses and also a white blouse with small whales as the pattern, and I'm this Tecoha Guarani territory in Brazil. I'm from the south of Brazil, born and raised in the south. And it's kind of hard to talk after listening to so much important information brought by you. But I wanted to bring some of the points that caught my attention. I'd like to congratulate this work by ELAS Fund. First of all, I'd like to talk about the flexible support to women and people with different trans identity and many intersectionalities in terms of vulnerabilities. And the points that are calling my attention in this research with a large number of organizations is how the gender, race, and other issues are crossed, are intersecting, and other agents that are conforming our colonialist and sexist story. This is seen when we see the funds that are not funding the cooperation, harmony, and so on. Cooperation is another point which is very important to us to comment in this universe of philanthropy, and Comuá Network and other networks with the participation of ELAS Fund, they are translated in this circle of raising funds to donate. We notice the impact of on the territories of communities that are led by women and other identities, and we notice how much room there is to donate even more and to bring the possibility of getting financial resources and also other non-financial resources that may contribute to the work that these women and the trans identity people are performing to defend their territories. Recently, I read this report from a group that caught my attention due to the unexpected results concerning this urban garden from this collective, this LGBT collective group from the state of Pernambuco. Beyond food safety and the recovery of spaces from that community, the point of psychosocial support of these people, people who were part of that garden, it was very moving because we need to work together.
Doesn't matter the point or the path that we are creating in this moment and how we are going to go through this path. The social movement, they have a lot to teach us when we are talking about cooperation, when we are talking about harmony, integration, and to strengthen this. And I really believe that the philanthropy field needs to remind these learnings that the research groups and from this research and others, but if you look only the numbers that this research is bringing us, the regions where we have the types of solutions that those groups are offering, how this group work and this collaboration, this trust network, this flexible work brings as a result. So the challenge that all of us have, it's huge. We are really working to survive in this planet. We do not have the time to over-articulate or to spend a lot of time, to spend this money and saliva with actions that are not efficient. And maybe sometimes what is simple brings a bigger impact on what we are imagining. I know that we have different levels and different layers of this climate funding context in this philanthropy sector, but I really believe in this opportunity that we have to work, to cooperate, to work as a collective, valuing everything that is happening in the front line, people that are doing this, are defending our environment, our biome, and bringing for this entire universe, this entire change that is connected chain by chain, where we have like the money, that we have many things to do, we have a lot of people to support, and we have many solutions that are doable, that are efficient, and especially they are about love about people, love when you are talking about our survival and how we are going to keep living in this small planet. That's my contribution. I thank once again for the opportunity, and I feel honored to be able to be part of those evaluations of the public call, and it's amazing learning to read each one of the forums and to better understand what's happening in that specific part of Brazil. For sure, it's something that I cannot describe. Once again, I thank you, the entire ELAS team, and all the people that are watching us today. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you for your support, your commitment, and how lovely you're talking about the points of the research, everything that you're doing at the fund. And I think that this care to look beyond what is really happening, I think it's most important for us to build this new reality, this different mindset, and a different logic for the women activists in Brazil. We are going to our last contribution, that it's Jonathas Azevedo. Jonathas has a bachelor degree in public relations for the Federal University of Janeiro, and he has PhD by PUC-Rio. In 2020, he has a master's degree with the entrepreneurship of London School of Economics, Political Science. Jonathan worked in monitoring and evaluating projects and building partnerships in Brazil and Haiti. He has experiences with human rights projects, human articulations, violence reduction, and other themes. Currently, he's executive director of Comuá Network, and he works at Médicos Sem Fronteiras in Brazil. Hello, Jonathan, the floor is yours. Are you there? Yes, I'm here. I'm very happy to be here with you. I want to start by thank you, of course, ELAS Fund for the invitation. Very honored to be here representing Comuá and to share this moment with you here. I had this difficult task to be the last one. A lot of what I wanted to say it was already said, but I want to reinforce a few points and to bring some messages, separate a few points to highlight here with you. I think that first of all, I want to start by presenting Comuá Network, because I think that from this, I can connect with the points that I want to share with you. The network was born in 2012, especially when ELAS what was one of the founding partners, and we have 18 organizations with the communitarian independent philanthropy and few of the civil societies that want to support the fights for human rights, sustainability, and this community strengthen. So those organizations and philanthropies that are getting the resources where our corporate philanthropy and family philanthropy, as we are hearing, this international mechanism that it's not looking at for this movement, civil society, the collectors, and the human rights defenders. I think that this is the first thing that I wanted to bring, that it's especially the potence of this funding mechanisms that are established by organizations on the community area independent philanthropy as ELAS. Those are organizations that have not only this amazing technical capability of having these resources to make this research reach us, that it's done by this amazing team that dedicate and work and have this amazing job, but also organizations that have the knowledge and have the organizations, and I think that have the trust of actors from civil society. And I think that this is the key when we want to talk about donating practices that are transforming the world, to think about this innovative mechanism that guarantee that groups, especially these that are not formal that we're talking about here, are able to access free resources that are annual resources and have the autonomy to decide how those resources are going to be applied, are going to be used and invested. So I think that when we look at more than 1,200 forms, more than 500 municipalities, I think this is a way to understand the importance of institutions as ELAS in trying to get the bureaucracy out of those resources and helping the collectives to reach them. And this is also important when the research talks about, as Savannah mentioned, the main sources of funding and types of support that those groups receive. So after mobilizing the resources of the community as volunteers, the individual donations, we have the independence funds. So when we are in this philanthropy forums, people asking how we are going to get the resource, I think that this research is the proof that those solutions and mechanisms already exist, and they are already working, and they already have the experience, and they have the trust, they have those networks. So we need to value those organizations, because here we are not talking about organizations that are only the bridge between those two. They're organizations that really build this partnership relations with the organizations and groups that are supported, and they are valuing and strengthening the autonomy of those groups. We're from Comuá, we are also collecting many of those stores and solutions, these local solutions, as part of this initiative of MAP Climate, that is an initiative that is going to show these philanthropies as communitarian independent as the key actors when you are talking about solutions to fight the climate change problems. So to bring there's a few numbers, only between the members of the network, especially ELAS, we have more than 400 million donated between 2022 and 2023 for collectives and movements that are working with this climate change. And when we look at social, the private investments, according to data from this corporate that we have here in Brazil, the support for this indigenous communities, quilombola communities, is very reduced when we look at the private donations. We're talking of less than 10% of everything that is invested in 2022. So I think that if we look closer we will see that those who are donating in this percentage are the independent organizations. So I think that this shows which organizations of philanthropy are in fact committed to support those groups. And as part of this incident of Comuá, instead of getting this climate agenda, the idea is to show that those communitary philanthropy and independent philanthropy shows that to talk about climate, talking about climate, to talking about people, talking about rights. So when we look here at ELAS research, that 487 groups, only 40% of the respondents said that they were impacted by the extreme climate events. Those percentage getting for more than 50% reporting to be impacted by those events. I think it's an important sign that we need to keep talking about. This group is already doing this, but we need to keep doing, and we need to keep doing this in this philanthropy spaces that we need to talk about this human rights agenda. We need to talk about people, and I think that this appears when we are looking at the consequences that those groups fight, the mental health damages, the attacks from civil society, the increase of inequality, maxes and races, the religious prejudice that we have. So to talk about climate justice is the key. Why we are still want to see in this philanthropy, those funders wanted to separate these agendas in different boxes. Climate is different than human rights. Why we're still having that debate about climate? When we go through different spaces, is a lot about the forest that is still standing, and we forget that inside those forests we have groups, we have ancestries, we have knowledge that guarantee this biodiversity and the existence of this biome. And where is this? Where are those groups on how the resources should be allocated when we are talking about climate funding? So I think that reading the research from ELAS Mais, in fact, it's very powerful. I think I want to say not only at ELAS, but the thing that got the design of the report. It's easy to read, it's beautiful, and I think that it helps us thinking in different ways on how to continue spreading this research to other channels, other means, and I want to congratulate ELAS for the research, and I think that it will strengthen this fight or when we are talking about climate justice and finding the resources to fund climate. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathas. Thank you for your perception that goes through different points that can be strengthened with this research data to get the attention on what we should say, and so the scenario would change. So we are getting to the end of our activity, our live, our webinar, and we have a few minutes for questions before we wrap up. This question was sent through YouTube. I'm going to read it. This question is for our researchers, for people that were doing the research. So, Shinja, are you here to answer the question?
Estamos aqui.
Yes, we are here.
Eu só estou com a câmera desligada.
A pergunta foi da Cláudia Marques de
The
Oliveira.
question was sent by Cláudia Marques de Oliveira. Was there any specific data that instituted of women institutions LGBT that are incarcerated or far from their families? This is the question that came from YouTube. Anyone here in Zoom would like to get a question, to send a question? And Ju and Sinji would answer, and then we can finalize the webinar. You can raise your hands and we can organize that.
Não?
No?
Beleza.
Okay.
Então vamos então para essa
So
resposta. Savana,
let's
pergunte,
answer this.
também, que bom que
Savannah, I
já apareceu por
I was
aqui.
thinking about you. It's nice to see you here.
Aqui, não sei por quê.
They put me here. I don't know why. I'm waiting for the answer.
Maravilha. Maravilha. Vamos então fazer essa resposta e o nosso
So let's
encerramento.
answer this question and then we can end up. Thank you for those who are here with us for the entire time. It's great to have this exchange. To read this is amazing, but to be able to present and hear the details is excellent.
Eu agradeço muito essa oportunidade de falar
I
desse
thank
tema
you
também,
for the
porque
opportunity to talk about this theme because we have many cases that we would like to show more and talk more about them. And
Peraí, rapidinho, desculpa. E eu não estou conseguindo ligar o vídeo porque
I'm not
acabou
being
a
able
luz aqui em
to
casa.
turn on the video because I don't have electricity here and I was trying to find a better space. I'm sorry.
Mas tiveram casos, sim, principalmente
We
as
had
mães, né,
cases,
pessoas
especially
em situação carcerária, que elas acabam
especially
ficando só muito
the
tempo,
incarcerated women because they are a lot of time for in the sun, the ones that are the mothers that are going to visit their daughters that are incarcerated and they wait for a long time in the sun under the sun and they need to try to help them coming back to society, finding
elas cresciam, né, e contavam como era importante
and they thought how important
essa capacidade de voltar e trabalhar
how important to go
também,
back
então trabalhar com
and
importância do
working
espaço
with
da horta,
different
né,
places. So
muito parecido com
working
o que
with
a Van
plantations,
desse
it's
espaço,
similar
que
of
que é
we are talking about here. This it's a spiritual
então
way
são
to work
algumas
with
coisas
the
que eu não tô
community.
conseguindo lembrar aqui
So it's
agora.
a few things that I'm able to remember now,
Deixa eu
but
lembrar mais algumas.
maybe Ju can help me out here.
Não, só meio para também partilhar.
No, I just wanted to share. We had many cases
De mulheres trans, né,
of trans women.
Foram muito mesmo casos assim de
Many cases of groups and organizations talking about the LGBT movement
buscando essa questão de
and trying to find
mídia principalmente,
this,
usar a mídia
especially the media, to use media as fights to when we are talking about the social communication and those networks.
eu achei bem
And
porque
I thought it was interesting because this movement and different groups are focusing
se apropriar de espaços de
and I trying to find them in these powerful places with those deputies and the municipalities and bringing those networks, the trans women and LGBT. They are creating those networks to strengthen those communities and to find these different powerful movements, not only in this municipality, but in the state and the federal government. Many mothers groups of mothers that have kids with disability, creating networks to be able to find the support and scheduling activities inside the community with those kids. It's a social inclusion movement, and we also have a few impacted cases. I'm also focusing in this trans women possibility because we have many groups of Black trans women that in those times it can be during floods or landslides. They were impacted in not having, when they see the public policies, when we are talking about gender, where do I fit? To have this acceptance that they are she and her, and they suffer more about this than a woman or a kid or a man that it's straight and says due to this situation to find those care to use a bathroom, a restroom. It's very complicated, and we have different points. And in those spaces, even in those care spaces, they are suffering violence, and not only physical violence, but also they are being killed.
E o que eu destaco também, que eu vi muitos
And
grupos
what I also highlight that we have many women's group that
da intolerância religiosa.
were talking about
Então,
religious
foi muitos
intolerance.
grupos levantando
So we have
essa
many
questão,
groups talking about this,
colocando essa defesa, né, o
talking
porquê,
about how they have to
colocando a
defend
razão
themselves
da
and
criação do
explaining the reason
pela essa luta
that they
pela
need to fight
intolerância
this
religiosa,
religious
e voltado também
intolerance
para a
and
cultura
to
afro,
strengthen
né?
this
Se
black
podem ver que na
culture.
pesquisa
You
foi
can see in the
um dos
research it
números, né,
was a big number
de
of
organizações negras,
organizations that are
a
black
maioria
organizations,
falava da
and
questão
most of them were
da
talking about
intolerância
race and
religiosa,
intolerance, the
trazendo
religious
ali a matriz
intolerance, bringing these African
africana,
roots
né, matriz africana.
to their
Então,
points.
foi várias linhas, né, de
So
pesquisa dos grupos,
we saw
com
many
mulheres
different lines from
tránsito,
different
cis,
groups
né,
with trans
e
women,
todas
cis
elas,
women, and all of them
tentando, né, fazer essa
were
unidade,
trying
e não era
to
grupo exclusivo de trans,
be
eram trans,
united.
mulheres cis,
It
então
was not
era essa
an
unidade
exclusive group made up
para
of
favorecer
trans,
as suas
but
lutas.
trans
Então teve,
people
eu
with
achei
cis
interessante
people.
as mães
So
se
they
unirem
were
para
strengthening
poder
their
buscar esses
battle,
espaços
their
seus fundos, né?
their
Que eles
connections to
ficavam
fight,
encarcerados,
trying to
enfim,
find spaces for
tem
their children
deficiências,
who
né?
were
Que sofrem nessa
incarcerated,
sociedade totalmente
suffering in this society which is full of prejudice, right?
Obrigada, Juliana. Obrigada, gente,
Thank
pela
you, Juliana.
pergunta. A gente vai agora para o
Thank you
nosso
for
bloco
answering the
final.
question.
E
Now we
a
are
gente vai
going
chamar a
to
diretora cofundadora do ELAS
start with the final session. I'd like to call Amália Fischer. She is the coordinator of Doar para Transformar, Donate to Transform. And thank you for debating with us on climate justice. I'd like to introduce Amália. She's a doctor in communication and culture from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. She's Mexican and she is educated in Brazil. She has taught in the Autonomous University of Mexico and she founded the Center of Studies on Women. She is a general coordinator of ELAS Plus, Donate to Transform. She's the co-founder of the Comuá Network and also the funds for Latin America. And she is vice president of the Baobab Fund for equity. And so good evening, Amália. It's your turn, and you're going to wrap up the contributions for the research. Amália, I think you're muted.
Desculpa.
I'm sorry.
Eu vou ir direto, porque acho que todo mundo está
I'm going to
cansado
be
já.
straightforward because everybody's tired. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your mediation. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. I'd like to thank Cindy Carvalho, Juliana, Manayara Tupinambá, and the researchers who brought us this gem. And also the different comments by the panelists. And also thank a lot for those who faced many barriers. I'd like to thank Yasmin Monteiro, Rosilene Tupinambá Souza, Jonathas Azevedo, Vanessa Purper, and most of all, I'd like to thank Savana Brito, who had this wonderful idea of using questionnaires to develop this research, which is incredible for all of us. I'd like to thank the translators from Contactus, Rita Pacheco and Verônica Manarino, and also Bruno Borges, Cristiano Ribeiro, and most of all, the organization of this event and the collaborative work among different departments of ELAS, especially the communication department, and most of all, Juliana Nogueira, who was the coordinator of this live, Juliana Loureiro, and she and also with the Department of Logistics, Development of Human Resources, and I'd like to especially thank all the organizations which collaborated by sharing their data. And thank you so much, Comuá and Mamacaj, for the material support to elaborate this wonderful research. Thank you so much. Good evening to all. Thank you, Amália. Now we are coming to the end of this webinar, Climate Justice and Feminist Activism, Impacts and Solutions. We hope that the data we disclosed here and the discussion with experts can resonate in different fronts of climate justice, in different territories, philanthropic funds, and different programs. We would like this research to contribute for more funding for women organizations all around Brazil. I would like to thank the participation of the guests and everyone who was with us and all the 1,280 organizations who allowed us to use their data, such as Comuá Network. We would like to thank the feminist activism and all the system of philanthropies, the partners who are supporting the transformation. And we wish you all have a great evening. And we have many people engaged with this webinar and the research, all the technical team, everyone involved since the beginning of the work until the delivery. So we wish you have a great evening. We are going to disclose this seminar on YouTube. So please disseminate this research and download it because you should use it. A good research is the research that is used to achieve different places. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to mediate this conversation. It was a great seminar. I have many notes in on my notebook now, and we need this inspiration to go forward and advance. Thank you so much. Good evening, and we will see around. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Obrigada, gente. Foi ótimo.
Obrigada, Marcele, arrasou.
Thank you, everyone. It was great. Thank you, Marcel.
Obrigada,
Thank
gente.
you.
Obrigada, Rose. Obrigada, Ju. Obrigada a todas, todes.
Goodbye, everyone.
Vou sair, tá, gente? A gente fala